Looks like it's live.
It is live on YouTube and I'm getting the Facebook going.
Hi, Esmeralda.
Hi, Lisa.
I haven't been able to see you to congratulate you on your engagement.
Oh,
I'm
yeah.
so happy.
Thank you.
And if you need a Zoom preacher to marry you, hey, I got my online thing.
Appreciate it.
Which I don't think you're going to use, but you know, the offer's out there. You never know.
Thank you.
Maybe we can go ahead and start the meeting on live on YouTube, and then Facebook will engage it as soon as we can get it up and running.
Okay. We'll go ahead and then get started. So I want to welcome everyone. Thank you for being patient. We're having a little bit of technical difficulties, but I do want to welcome you to our first District 1 virtual community meeting. As you guys know, over the last 6 years or 5.5 years that I've been on the council, I've really tried to have as many community meetings to engage the public about what is happening in the district, in the city of Fresno, and to listen to any concerns and answer questions that you may have. Today, we're hosting our first virtual community meeting, given the fact that we are facing unprecedented times and we do have a shelter in place order that requires us to stay home. And so we want to make sure that folks have the ability to continue to receive critical information, not only regarding any COVID-19 updates, but other updates related to public safety and also public works. I also want to thank the panelists that have made time this evening to join us. We do have Northwest Policing District Captain Burke Farah, who will be talking in a little bit. Thank you, Captain, for being here. We also have the Central Policing District Captain Mindy Costo, one of our newest captains, and so we want to welcome her as well and thank her for making the time to be with us this evening. And we do have our Public Works Director, Scott Mosier, who will also be talking about what other work is happening around the city of Fresno. Even though many of us are working from home or staying home, there are a tremendous amount of people that are still frontline workers every single day. We have our first responders who are frontline workers, making sure that our city continues to be safe, that our neighborhoods continue to be safe. And we have our frontline workers, city workers that are still out there doing construction projects and infrastructure projects to make sure that also quality of life and public safety in our community continues to be strong. So again, thank you for joining us. I want to thank all of the attendees that are on our Zoom call, those that are going to be watching us via YouTube and also watching us via Facebook. Terry Cox, my chief of staff, mentioned earlier there will be opportunities to ask questions during the meeting. We do have an agenda. We'll start off with just some COVID-19 updates. We'll move on to public safety and then public works. I will allow folks to ask questions after each topic that is covered. We do ask everyone, as was mentioned, to keep, if you are on the Zoom, to keep your mic muted, and when you have a question after the section, to raise your hand, and we will accordingly call on you to get your question answered. With that, I'll go ahead and kind of kick it off. I did want to, before I move on to first the COVID updates, just to give you guys a little bit of information regarding District 1 and what we've been working on over the course of the last few months, aside from everything related to COVID. But just wanted to give you guys an update on some of the projects. Itzy, can you put the, we have a little PowerPoint. So right prior to COVID-19 and our shelter in place order, Councilmember Anarias and I introduced or kicked off what we call the District Beautification Project. It's a partnership with Neighborhood Industries. Unfortunately, due to COVID-19, we've had to kind of put it on standstill. So right now it's in the queue. It hasn't begun. It is going to still be a 6-month pilot where we will be doing weekly litter pickup and sidewalk pressure washing along the Olive Avenue and the plant between Palm and Blackstone area. We also are still working on installation of 8 artistic trash cans, which will be upgrading of the overhead and upgrading the overhead string lighting that you guys see on the Olive corridor, and then continue the maintenance of the crosswalk art that we did last year. So those are projects that are still in our queue. Obviously, there is a little bit of delay because of a COVID-19 and kind of the shelter in place order, but we will make sure that these projects still continue to happen. We've allocated the resource. It's a matter of just once it's safe enough to be able to do these projects, we will make sure that we are letting you all know how you can participate. Every time we have a project in the community or in the district, we get a great number of volunteers. So again, we will be calling out to you to come help us and be part of these various projects. Also, one of the newest things that was just announced, and I know that Scott Mosier will be talking about this, there's been a lot of talk about the Blackstone and McKinley area because from year one, I've been working with 2 developers to do affordable housing, a mixed use, to revitalize the corridor, the Blackstone corridor where our BRT happens to be. And an exciting project was brought to my attention earlier last month. And this is the Railroad Separation Project. If any of you guys travel up and down Blackstone by Fresno City College or on McKinley, you're either faculty or a student, you see how sometimes when the train passes, you get stuck for a little time. As a professor, I sometimes get told by my students that they're late to class because they got stuck behind the railroad. So what this Railroad Separation Project will do, it will alleviate a number of issues, safety issues, and also traffic and congestion issues that have been present since kind of the build out of this neighborhood. And so we are excited to be starting. FCTA just voted on an allocation of $6 million to begin kick off the project. Additional investments will be added over time, but we do expect this project to kind of be on the road in works over the next 5 years. And Scott at his time can speak more to this. And we will be having more community meetings. I just wanted to make sure folks knew that this was going to be happening. So I put it on your guys' radar. Other just neighborhood improvements that have been happening for folks. I know that, you know, given COVID-19, we're kind of sucked into what are the latest updates and also resources. But I think it's important to recognize that the city of Fresno continues to work, and our city staff is still committed to making sure that these projects get done throughout the city of Fresno. So last month, the city of Fresno street maintenance crews did repairment of pavement in the neighborhood bounded by Shields, Hughes, and Dakota and the Crystal area. an older neighborhood that needed some TLC. And so we were proud to be able to make some investments there. I know that we got some comments by a number of the constituents. So we want to thank city staff for getting that done. Also, the city of Fresno in coordination with Caltrans, the county of Fresno and the FCTA approved the pilot litter removal program for our local highways. I know that we've gotten a lot of complaints. I think just as of today, we got still complaints of litter. And so there's additional dollars that were invested to continue to do more cleanup and be picked up on a 30-day cycle. So that is something that is happening, and we're proud of the investments that were made. This past February, we obviously celebrated the groundbreaking of the Blackstone and McKinley Transit-Oriented Development, which I alluded to earlier. It is going to bring 88 affordable housing units and 93 square feet of commercial space. It is going to include majority of the space, walk-in clinic 7 days a week, Clinica Sierra Vista, and also a much needed neighborhood senior center, which we are happy to be partnering with Fresno City College in efforts to provide programming for our senior population in that area of the city. And I know I believe I saw Trustee Perea in the meeting, and I know that we've been working with her along with the president of Fresno City College to make this happen as the center gets built. And then also one of the other important groundbreakings that we celebrated earlier this year was Fire Station 18. I'm very proud that I was able to support investments to bring the permanent fire station, because our firefighters have been working out of a home, essentially, not very adequate to the work that they do. So we're proud that it seems to be on schedule, and we will soon see our firefighters be dispatched out of there, so off of the Shaw and Bryan Avenue. So just now, I'll move on to the first thing on the agenda, which is the COVID-19 updates. So we'll start off with the mayor extension of the shelter in place order. As you guys have heard, that's COVID-19 updates on a regular basis every single day. The shelter in place order was extended through Sunday, May 31st. There has been additional guidelines that have been given, and there have been some modifications to the previous shelter in place order. We are asking everyone to wear masks when you go out, either to the grocery store or to a restaurant or to some business to purchase whatever you need to purchase, and also to maintain the social distancing guidelines as advised by the CDC. And so we're asking everyone to take safety and precautions when you are out there. Today, the new numbers came out. We saw 60 new COVID cases here in Fresno County. So while I do want to first thank each and every one of you that has been abiding by the shelter in place order, for those of you that are non-essential workers or can work from home, thank you for following that. It is because of the sacrifices that everyone is making that our numbers have stayed steady, and we haven't seen dramatic increases or dramatic increases in the number of deaths. I think that we are at 9, and while 9 it may seem like a low number, I just want to remind everyone that number is low because of the work that folks have been doing by staying at home and abiding by the CDC guidelines. So we want to thank everyone for doing that. I also want to make sure that folks know that as of today, May 11th, there were new guidelines offered for very low and low contact business categories that could open and remain open as long as the conditions of the emergency does not significantly worsen. Obviously, there are guidelines that the city has put out, and we expect our business owners to abide by those and make sure that we keep everyone safe. Also, we'll be adding that the city of Fresno is also implementing business safeguards. And I believe that you can go onto the City of Fresno website also to get additional information on those. But if you look at the screen, some of the business safeguards, obviously the social distancing protocol, we are asking folks to wear protective facial coverings, both for employees and the customers. We are also asking for businesses that the occupancy of one customer per 500 square feet, that there is sanitation and disinfecting happening, and also try to do contact-free payment, and then make sure that folks are being trained, employees are being trained for these safeguards to make sure that we keep those numbers down. You can also see on the authorized businesses, there was a number of businesses that are allowed to be open as of today with these additional safeguards. I know that we got a number of questions about furniture stores. So a lot of this is you drive up and you pick up for many of these retail stores. So make sure that when you're going out there that you are staying safe. And if you have questions, we'll be happy to provide any answers. I know I will say that many businesses, because we've heard from our business owners throughout District 1, are experiencing hardship. And as I mentioned, many of us and many folks in our community are having to make sacrifices during this pandemic, and we don't take that lightly. I don't take that lightly. That is why a few weeks ago, our council supported an investment. It was a small investment of monies to provide some short-term relief to our small business owners, especially those that didn't get the benefit of any federal relief. We were hearing that a lot of our very mom and pop businesses didn't get the paycheck protection dollars that were authorized by Congress and signed by the president. And so we offered $750,000 for this program, or to kick off the program, which is called the Save Our Small Businesses program. 2 weeks ago, we brought a resolution forward to increase the amount. So the city of Fresno did receive $92 million from the CARES Act. And the $92 million are to be used for COVID related expenses. And that includes supporting our small business or our business community for any economic loss. And so in line with what we originally did, I brought forward another resolution to propose that we invest $2 million out of the $92 million for additional grants. So these would be strictly grants. Again, as we did the first round, it would be $5,000 for businesses that have 5 employees or less, and $10,000 for businesses that have more than 5 employees. And so we have the opportunity this Thursday to add an additional appropriation of $2 million. So I encourage folks to contact the council and the mayor to encourage them to support these efforts. Our small business community needs this right now. As you know, we continue this road to recovery. The city of Fresno needs to step up and support these businesses, in particular those that have been closed down completely, and then those that have lost a tremendous amount, like our restaurants here in the city of Fresno. We know that the businesses are the backbone of our local economy, and so we need to make sure that we do everything we can so that we save our businesses and then that they don't end up going bankrupt. The other thing that I will be proposing, similar 2 weeks ago, we brought forward a resolution. We have been hearing from a lot of our constituents across the city that even though we created an order to protect them from being evicted during this pandemic, many folks are unable to pay their rent due to loss of job hours or reduction of job hours, or the fact that they're not working because their employer have to shut down operations during this time. So we want to make sure that we support our residents. And so there will be an allocation, and we will be voting on this on Thursday, of $1.5 million for housing retention grants. One of the things that we are attempting to do is to prevent having our residents be homeless after this pandemic is over, because they are so far behind on rent. I've heard the stories personally. We heard in the last council meeting, residents like Juan Carlos, I think Juan Carlos lives in Southeast, talk about the fact that he was a DJ and that was his job, and he is unable to do his job during this time because he is called to be at home and is bringing no income. So he's struggling. His family is struggling and is now 2 months behind in rent. And so we want to help those individuals that have no income and are struggling, so that when we get over this, they aren't, they're not fearing eviction. The last thing that we will be also proposing on Thursday is an appropriation of $500,000 for a farm to family program. What we know that here in Fresno County, in the city of Fresno, we have a lot of small, micro, what we would call micro farmers. Farmers that grow specialty crops, and due to the pandemic, they don't have markets where they can sell the product. So a lot of their product is essentially being left to rot. And so we know that right now many families are experiencing hunger as a result of job loss and economic loss. So what we thought would be a great thing to do is try to help our local micro farmers and buy their produce, so that we can in turn put that produce into our neighborhood. So we will be working very closely with one of the local nonprofits who is entering into partnership with the Central California Community Food Bank to make sure that the produce doesn't essentially rot, and that we take it into the neighborhoods that need it the most to get fed during this pandemic. And so it is a win-win situation. We're hoping that our council will show support for this program. Is that it for this? Is that the last one? I think those are all. So those are the last just updates on the work that we've been doing. Again, we want to thank folks for keeping up to date. We will continue to send information. If you guys have questions on just kind of the COVID-19 updates, you can go ahead and punch up and we will try to answer your question. If we don't have any questions, we will then move to our next segment, where we will get an update from public safety.
Council member Soria, we do have one person online, Brandy, who has a question regarding COVID and homelessness.
Okay.
Brandy, would you like to, at this time, present your question?
Sure. Sorry, I have to pull it up so I can read what I sent. But my question is just speaking on behalf of your constituents that are homeless in the Tower District area. I know that there's constant question about waiting and wondering what's going on to protect those vulnerable who already are homeless. And with the knowing that the city is not stopping sweeps, we know that some people are continuing to be pushed out and pushed into the Poverello House area, which is congested, and they are not being offered housing. What are you doing to personally? What have you personally been doing to protect those who are homeless? We've been hearing a lot of numbers about all the people, all the beds, but I find that when you subtract the numbers of beds that were already existing, it seems small, and that there's people who are waiting to be able to have a shelter. And also asking what are you doing to help ensure that they can be able to access testing so that to be able to protect them during this time?
Yeah, thank you, Brandy. for those questions. So one, over the last few months, we've been working closely with Fresno County, and it's been a joint effort to try to address, as you mentioned, we did add additional beds to the original count. Prior to the pandemic, we had already made, I think, some strides to begin to tackle the issue. It's not a easy issue, and given kind of the situation that we are, it seems to have made it a lot more complicated, but we have tried to work as hard as we can as a council. I know that the providers and the county, we've been working to try to make sure that the new beds that were created, that we allocated the resources so that we wouldn't in turn have to put people back on the streets. And so that's what we've been working on, and making sure that we have enough dollars to keep them in the shelter so that we can move them to permanent housing. The goal is to get folks in the pipeline to eventually get into permanent housing, which is why affordable housing in our community is also important, an issue that I continue to work on. When it comes to the testing, and actually before I go to the testing part, you will see in this council meeting, we are talking more about other resources over the course of the next couple weeks. Our budget subcommittee will be getting together to figure out what other things do we want to do. How is it that the city can effectively use the dollars that we did get during this emergency to make sure that we are building permanent beds in our community and addressing the problem for the long run, not just for right now. And I know that the challenge still continues in the city of Fresno to try to shelter as many more folks and to make sure that they have the resources so that they are kept safe. When it comes to testing, as you probably have seen from the latest reports, the city of, not just the city of Fresno, but County of Fresno is behind on that in having enough tests for the community, which is why the county is working on a plan in the coming weeks. And that's the plan that is also required by the state so that we can see the road to recovery much sooner than what people are feeling like where we're at. And so we are trying to get more testing. We will see if that's something that the city of Fresno has any ability to provide additional resources. We'll be having all those discussions in the coming weeks. It wouldn't surprise me if it comes up at council this week, but we do need to do more. We need to make sure that our testing capacity increases. You probably saw also more recently, there was a testing center that was open at Fresno City College. I even tried to sign up for an appointment, and I think it was within 5 days, pretty much all the appointments were booked up. So there is a great demand and a great need, and so we're going to continue to move to put more resources to make sure that we address those challenges.
Thank you, and I appreciate all those things. Just as a quick follow-up, I want to know in the process of the lack of shelter, are you guys looking into ways of making the current allocations, the money stretch farther so we can get more people housed in the meantime? And for those who are out there considering having any discussion on things as far as sweeps so that people who are vulnerable aren't being pushed into a more vulnerable situation?
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. So over the next, probably in the next 2 weeks, we're going to be having that conversation. There is a desire to add more shelter, but we're being cognizant that we want to make sure that it's sustainable. That's the thing. I don't want to be in a situation, to be honest, where we only have enough money through right before Christmas, and then we're having to evict people and they're back on the street. So we have to be very thoughtful and balanced in our approach so that we're actually creating a pipeline that is sustainable to move people into permanent housing or housing that is supportive and addressing the challenges that many of the folks that are still out in the streets and that's going to make them successful. So we will be having that, and we're happy to keep you updated. I know that you are also in contact with Councilmember Arias. He's been super engaged, as well as I have, with the county in our subcommittee to try to tackle this issue, which is not an easy issue. But thank you for your questions.
Thank you.
Councilmember, and one more question we have, and this one is regarding housing retention. And Shannon is on the line and she can ask you the question.
Thank
Shannon?
you. My question is, with the housing retention program, is it going to be given to people in the form of grants? And if so, how much money are tenants eligible to receive? And is there any guarantee or condition that the money has to be provided to the landlord as payment for back due rent?
So thank you, Shannon, for the question. So the program is two-pronged. So we were recommended, because the state of California is doing something similar, where there are two options. One, we would like the landlord to get engaged. And for those landlords that choose to be engaged, 80% of the back due rent would be paid. And the landlord would have to essentially take that 80% and charge no late fees, not increase the rent during the period of the pandemic, and so forth. So that is one option. The second option, if your landlord chooses not to engage, we want to make sure that the community or that the resident still has the ability to get a grant, a housing retention grant. And so that would mean that an individual would get one individual could get $500 to cover part of the rent. We realize we don't have enough dollars to cover everyone's 100% of the rent, so we're trying to provide though some resource so that they don't get so far behind. And for a family, it would be $1,000. That is what the proposal is today. We will see if there is support, from the majority of the council to be able to create a program such as that. So there's two options on it, because we recognize that some landlords may choose not to engage and take 80% of the back due rent.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Kim, that's all the questions we have for this section.
Okay, perfect. So we'll go ahead and move on to our next section, which entails public safety. I want to thank both captains for being on with us this evening. I want to first thank you for the tremendous amount of work that you guys are doing during this pandemic to continue to ensure the safety of our residents. I know that you guys are all frontline workers risking your life, not only on a daily basis, but now that we're in a pandemic, obviously in a different form as well. So thank you so much. District 1 includes 2 districts. It includes the Northwest Policing District, which is led by Captain Burke Farah. He is no stranger to that area. He's been there about 3 years. And so I want to say that I appreciate his work. We have a great working relationship. And whenever our residents call to him, or when we call on to him, he is quick to respond. So we want to thank you for that. And after him, we have our newest captain, and we want to welcome her. Go woman power. I love it that we have a woman captain leading the Central Policing District. She's been there since January of this year. So we want to thank her for the work that her team is doing in the central area of the city to make sure that they're safe, and also thank her for the prompt response that you give our office, and when we have constituent concerns, you guys are also quickly to respond. So thank you so much. So I'll kick it off and start with Northwest, and then we can have Captain Castro speak.
Well, thank you, Council Member Soria. We really appreciate the opportunity to engage with your residents of your district. I'd rather do it in person than over Zoom, as I'm sure you would too. I'm looking forward to that day. We can get back in a room and see faces and see reactions and deal with people where they're at with their challenges. I'm not just a resident. I'm not just a worker in the Northwest District. I'm a resident here too. This is my neighborhood. And like everybody in the community, we are concerned about our elderly parents. We're concerned about our friends who own small businesses. We're concerned about our restaurant owners and friends that have those types of businesses. So I think we're all looking forward to a time when we can get back to something closer to normal. I appreciate the lessons that we've learned so far due to COVID-19. I see that folks are taking more care, more concern about their personal health and how that impacts other people. And I think that's important moving forward. When it comes to public safety and crime, I'm happy to report that with one very notable exception, we've had a lot of cooperation within the community. We've had a lot of folks doing a lot of nice things. When folks were concerned about supplies and there were long lines at the big box stores, people are patient, people are understanding, people are courteous to each other. And that's the kind of spirit of Fresno that I've enjoyed seeing as we move through this pandemic is people coming together as a community to help each other out. I've had neighbors offer me toilet paper. I've had folks offer water, and we've had an unending supply of donations to our police officers that are out here on the front lines. I'm concerned that the COVID-19 is going to put 19 pounds on our cops because of the generosity of our community when it comes to food and likewise. We've had an outstanding support when it comes to masks. Like almost everybody else, we're caught a little off guard by this COVID pandemic, and our police officers did not have masks. And boy, did our community step up. Our CSO, Kate Wortman, put together her efforts to mobilize the community, to get donations for materials, and then to mobilize an incredible group of craftsmen who sewed those masks for us. And that allowed us to get into masks very early, earlier than a lot of other organizations. So we appreciate the support that we've received from our community, and we appreciate the opportunity to continue policing. My concerns as a police captain in the Northwest District are with violent crime. That's always our top priority is violent crime, people getting hurt, people getting shot, stabbed, or otherwise. And we have seen an increase in violent crime, and that causes me great concern. Some of the tools we ordinarily use to deal with that violent crime are not available to us right now. Sometimes we would go into a neighborhood and contact folks that were in violation of their probation conditions. And we would take them off the street and book them into jail for a few days to kind of cool the neighborhood out and cool down some of those simmering gang feuds. Those tools are not available to us right now. The state guidelines on who goes to jail and who stays in jail have been incredibly changed. And as a result, folks on the street that are engaged in a criminal lifestyle understand that. And they know it, and they realize that there's not as many we don't have as many tools at our disposal. And there's a lot of things they can get away with, and they won't suffer any repercussions for it. So we're seeing an increase in gang violence, and I am concerned about that chiefly.
Thank you for that update. We'll go on to Captain Casto.
Hello. Thank you for having us. We really appreciate this opportunity to connect because that's what we're really missing. In the Central District, we're accustomed to having so many community interactions, whether it's with our school officers and the children and our mentoring programs or our Saturday sports and all the community get-togethers that we normally engage in where officers actually get to speak with children and other people in the community. We do miss those formal opportunities, but I do have to say this has been a great opportunity, even though it's a tragedy for our community on so many levels. We've really been able to continue connecting on a one-on-one basis because we still are out making one-on-one in-person contact with people. So it's actually, I think it's been great for us. We've seen tremendous support, like Captain Ferris said, people constantly bringing us food, people buying coffee when we're in the drive-thru at Starbucks. It's just been a fantastic opportunity. And it shows that, regardless of the circumstances, the Fresno Police Department and its officers are here to serve the community, no matter how bad things get. So I hope that, we both learned a little bit. Our officers are very compassionate towards businesses and the people in our community. They understand the hardship that they're going through, but they're still there. And we really put a focus on just trying to be compassionate towards them when they have needs. Again, to reiterate what Captain Ferris said, violent crime really is our issue right now. It's still slightly down overall in the city, but we've seen a big rise in shootings. So we're doing our best to combat that. But of course, some of the orders that have come down from the state with regard to bail have interfered a little bit with our ability to have an impact on that. Regardless, we don't give up, and we've continued to do our best on enforcement and prevention here in the Central District. So we look forward to things getting back to normal so we can have real outreach, but we're making, like we always do, the best out of the situation at hand.
Thank you, Captain Casto, also for that update. So what we'll do right now, I think I see a hand or two for questions. First, I think we're gonna go, there's Lisa Flores. She has her hand up. Lisa?
Well, since this is a meeting about COVID, I have some concerns. My first concern is about the police chief, Andy Hall. And, he was at that freedom rally and he was hugging people. He didn't have gloves on. He didn't have a mask on. And I'm very concerned about the rank and file police officers and their potential exposure to Andy Hall. And, because Corona spreads, it spreads fast. And, I look at it everywhere I go. I am so masked up, gloved up, I have a little to-go kit. No matter where I go, I have sanitizer. I never get out of my car. So, I'm concerned now with any interaction I have with the police force because Andy's out there without a face mask and gloves and not social distancing. I mean, what was that about? Also, too, is there plans in the city to start finding people who aren't wearing masks intentionally? Because, my nephew who goes to Harvard, he's going back in a couple of weeks and he's already requested me to make him face mask because it's a $300 fine if you're out and about without a face mask.
Thank
That's
you
my
for,
comments.
thank you for those questions. I'll start off by answering the last one that you just asked. We haven't had to establish a policy to fine folks because we've gone pretty much 99% compliance from folks, especially since the time that we've recommended folks to wear face masks. At least when I've gone out, I see majority of the folks wearing face masks. But, it wouldn't surprise me if that comes up as a conversation over the course of the next few weeks. What we want to do, and I think, as I mentioned earlier, because everyone has essentially, majority of folks have been following the guidelines. We've seen the numbers not be so high as in, even other neighboring communities. Because of the early leadership and the early action of our entire community. And I'm grateful that folks have chosen to be compliant. As for your first question, I don't know if any of the captains want to take a stab out of that question. I will tell you that I wasn't at the rally, so I don't know. I only know what the pictures that you mentioned showed. I'm sure that everyone, and maybe they can speak, the captains can speak to it, but as far as I know, all city employees have been given protective masks. And so when I've seen officers out and about, I've seen them wearing their protective gear.
Not only are we doing that, we're also required to take our temperatures before we start each shift at work. Each of our officers is issued multiple masks so they can have one to wear and one in the laundry. So they're constantly prepared for that. And they should be wearing those when they're in contact. We also have the N95 masks that are available to our officers for when they come in contact with someone who has been diagnosed COVID positive or if they're symptomatic for COVID positive. So we have those masks available as well. So our people have all the equipment they need to protect themselves and each other. We've got hand sanitizer that's been graciously donated by the community at a time when it just wasn't available. We've had, I think it was Riley's that changed their, they went from making beer to making hand sanitizer and got that in the hands of our police officers. So again, the community's been very generous and responded to make sure that our personnel have the equipment they need to protect themselves and protect our community. And understand right now, we have had exactly 0 Fresno police officers that have tested positive for COVID-19. So that's really not been an issue in our community, fortunately.
Thank you. Any other questions as it relates to public safety? I don't see any. Ladies, staff, District 1 team, are there any other questions that have come up or that were emailed?
No, the only question, there was one comment that came back and Brandy said that she is very grateful and loves the community support. That's been awesome.
Okay, awesome. Thank you so much. Thank you again to both of the captains for their update.
Thank you, our privilege. And again, we echo the support of the community. Folks have been wonderful to us, to our people, and we look forward to that relationship continuing as we move forward together.
I can thank you all very much and thank the community. We really appreciate their support. we're so lucky to have it. And I tell my officers all the time, never to take it for granted.
Awesome. Thank you so much again for joining us. Next, we'll move on to our Public Works update. We do have our Public Works Director, Scott Mosier, who will be giving an update. And I think that there's a slide with his presentation. Thank you, Scott, for being here.
All right. Thank you, Councilmember Soria, and good evening, everyone. Great to see names and faces up on the screen. Also, I want to express there's been a lot of community support for what we're doing. We know the community still counts on the city to do things like fill potholes, do infrastructure repairs if a street light is out, if there are tall weeds growing in a median island, tree limb goes down. The public is really counting on the city and the Public Works team to come out and respond. So I wanted to just mention briefly, yeah, we are all moving forward 100%. We've had to change our operation quite a bit with COVID-19. For example, one of our concrete repair crews typically would go out four employees in what we call a finisher truck in one of the city vehicles, come out to the side, unload, get to work, and we could not do that, maintain social distancing for the crews. So we've made changes like the lead worker, the finisher driving the truck, and other employees, instead of reporting to the yard in the morning, they're reporting out in the field. So when you see our crews, hopefully you see them. They're all required to wear masks for their work. We're consistent with the orders that are in place. But we're changing up the operation for these really challenging times. That said, there are still federal and state grant dollars available, and even discussion about possibly some stimulus measures that we want to be ready for. As Councilmember Soria shared, just last month, we were working in the Shields, Hughes, Dakota Crystal neighborhood on paving, and good news is there's more work coming up. Later this summer, we plan to repave Dakota Avenue itself between Hughes and Marks. And as I kind of walk through these projects, want to cover different parts of District 1, and we're really all over the district. There's some work going on throughout the community. Then in the fall, we'll move up to the other side of the BNSF corridor to the Santa Fe, Indianapolis, West Avenue, Tealman neighborhood, and that's complete neighborhood paving as well. And then in the spring, we're planning to be near Ashland and West. That's the Ashland, Bankston, Sussex neighborhood, and again, paving, complete concrete repair. So these are the kind of projects we're excited about. You know, we also have some pockets of the district where we share a city-county border, and in that area, one new addition we just successfully reached agreement on with the county public works and planning staff is to do some repaving near Palm and Shaw on the north end of the district. So that's coming soon in the fall as well. Another one of our programs, other than just repaving, is known as Slurry Seal. Similar to when a parking lot gets a new coat, but a street slurry seal is a little bit more robust between the oil, sand, water, and that's not to be used on a very deteriorated street, but it might be a very old street in the community, but if it's in decent shape, it's very much like resealing. You know, if you have a wooden deck, patio deck, and someone were to reseal that, if you don't put the seal coat on, it will just fall apart over time from the weather. And streets are actually very similar. So a number we'll be doing will be near Dakota and Brawley, the Dakota, Redlands, Brawley, Raphael neighborhood. Also in the Tower District, Fresno High area, Olive, Van Ness, McKinley, Blackstone, around City College, Swift Avenue between West and Emerson, the Ashland, Hughes, Crystal, Griffith neighborhood will be another slurry seal. So there are plenty of parts of the community that where the homes have been there for decades, but the streets in good shape for a slurry. We can do those slurry seal treatments for about 10% of the cost of repaving. So some may ask, well, here's a street over here that's totally failed. City of Fresno, why are you spending any money on the street that it looks decent, not brand new, but it looks decent? And that's because we really want to be good stewards of the public resources, and spend that penny so that it doesn't turn into, you know, a dollar of repair down the road. With our landscape division, some highlights. Hopefully, some of you are able to see the Shaw Avenue tree planting. This is, of course, the northern boundary of Council District 1, shared with District 2. But that was all done through a state CAL FIRE grant for tree planting. So those are in, the trees are thriving. And then also we've been working just east of Fresno High on the Weldon Avenue median island, just doing some irrigation repairs and actually getting some turf reestablished. So some grass is coming back up in that median, and we want it to look really good for the community, similar to Van Ness. On the the major project side, some big things we've just wrapped up. Traffic signal near Shields and Weber has been under construction. Ashland Avenue last year. The LED streetlight conversion citywide with all of our tall Cobra head type lights. Also, you may have seen under construction Dakota and West, the green arrow, or what we call protected left turn phasing going in. Another one for school safety near the Daly site, traffic signal going in at Shields and Harrison. We're just waiting on poles for that location, and that'll go in the fall. And as Councilmember Soria mentioned, Fire Station 18 out on Shaw Avenue. Councilmember also mentioned Olive Avenue. We're very proud of that project. The city of Fresno captured $1.3 million in federal grant funding. So this is not, you know, instead of public safety or instead of paving streets. This was a federal grant we captured. In addition to bulb outs to make the area even more walkable than it is already and enhance the business district, we'll also be repaving Olive Avenue from just west of Washon all the way over to Palm. So that'll be happening starting this fall. The paving itself will be more into the spring as we wrap up the project. Also, right in that area, across from the Tower Theater, or I'm sorry, one block down at Olive and Van Ness. Some of you may have noticed over the years that at that northeast corner, there's a tiny bus stop. The curb and gutter is pushed over in the corner. And then to the north, Van Ness narrows up again. And you may have thought, what was someone thinking back then? Well, someone had a plan that someday they'd be widening Van Ness all the way up to City College. And that would take out a lot of homes in that area. So that's long since abandoned, decades and decades ago. And so we received grant funding to push the curb and gutter back to its more historic location, and we'll be able to expand that very popular transit stop on the northeast corner, make that a better experience for the riders and also for pedestrians in the tower. So that's coming. As Councilmember Soria mentioned, appreciate you sharing about the Blackstone and McKinley Railroad grade separation. Will be very similar to Shaw and Marks. We're really just getting started on the engineering work, but we hope that come 5 years from now, that we're all pleased to have completed that project and really some great benefits in the area. Wanted to share a little bit about west of Highway 99. Some projects, again, lots of grant funding in the area, right near Polk and Gettysburg. So this is about half a mile south of the Shaw 99 interchange. We are in the engineering and environmental phase to widen the west side of Polk Avenue. This is about a $4.5 million project, and to install curbs, gutters, and sidewalks in that area. And that's in the winter, that's often flooded. So we're providing drainage, make the area safer and more walkable. The construction funding is set in for 2022. So we have some work to do to get there, but that'll be 2022. And with that, also just near Inspiration Park, we will be in some partnership with Central Unified School District on making the land available. We'll be filling that sidewalk gap as well on Gettysburg, and also adding a traffic signal at Gettysburg and Polk. So lots of things happening there. The last two wanted to mention just around the community. Also west of 99, we've just been awarded grant funding for adding a lane on Ashland Avenue from Cornelia out to Polk. It will add the second eastbound lane. That's slated for 2023. We have a developer slated to install the traffic signal at Ashland and Polk. So there is definitely a focus on both the west area roadways, also the tower, and our older neighborhoods, our established neighborhoods in the community. And with that, I'm glad to answer any questions.
Thank you, Scott. I think that was a great overview of the projects that are happening throughout District 1. As our constituents can see, we've tried to obviously spread the love. We do have limited resources, but we work very well with our Public Works Director to be strategic and, essentially get our most bang for our buck when it comes to our projects, and make sure that those neighborhoods that for a long time that they hadn't seen an investment, that they do get some TLC. And we will continue to do that over the next couple of years that we still have, and build on that. I will say that I'm proud of the work that we've been able to do with Public Works when it comes to west of the 99, and some of the attention that we brought to that area. We have still a lot of work to do, but I think that we've made a tremendous amount of progress, especially in the Shaw and Polk area, where we will see those the additional infrastructure come into play over the coming years, and we'll continue to see more sidewalks and more investment as more development also happens in the area. We know that it is area 1 in terms of growth, and so we're going to be smart about it, but we're going to make sure that the community gets the resources and amenities that it needs as we move forward. One of the things that we've been, and we will see now with the pandemic, a lot has changed, but we were planning to plan for the future of that parcel on Milburn and Dakota that is slated to be a park. We will see what the time frame will be with that. Given now our pandemic, we may see really minimizing of resources available. So we will see what happens, because we were going to look at potential state funding, but who knows now after the pandemic. But we'll keep folks essentially updated as we get more information, and if we are able to move forward. I know that there's been residents that live in that neighborhood that have that were promised that a park would come to that area of the city, and it has yet. So we're trying to hopefully at least get it in the works. It does take about 4, sometimes 5 years to build a park. Inspiration Park took a number of years. I came at the tail end of it, but it does take a tremendous amount of work to get those types of public projects going. So we will continue to have it on our list as a priority, and continue to take your concerns and suggestions as we go. A lot of these projects are really a result of the 30, almost 40 community meetings that I've had in my time, because what I want to tell each and every one of you guys are our eyes and ears, just like we are our eyes and ears for our public safety officials, because they can't be in every corner of the city. You guys do the same when it comes to infrastructure. I can't be in every corner of the district, but you guys do bring it to our attention, and we try to at least put it on our list to get it done. So thank you for your input. Are there any questions as it relates to Public Works and the projects that were mentioned by our Public Works Director? Do I see any hands?
Hey Esmeralda, I don't know if you can hear me or not.
Okay, yes.
Hey there. I sent Terry a message via the chat. Might as well get my,
Yeah,
my
go
video
ahead.
screen exercise in. Hey there. Hi, all members. I just had a couple of questions for they're probably Scott specific questions. One's about the McKinley Blackstone underpass. I know it's super early. And then the other one has to do with the trail network stuff in Fresno. Also pretty high level, but there's one kind of District 1 build out specific question that I had. So on McKinley Blackstone, I know we're super early. The two questions I have are, is there any indication whether the entire intersection is going to be below grade or if it's going to be a double underpass? And also, like the general plan for talking to probably like business owners or whatever the scenario is going to be with the housing that is slated to go in, that's under construction at the southwest corner of McKinley and Blackstone.
Those are great questions. And Blackstone McKinley, I know working with Councilmember Soria, the plan is actually to work on an additional virtual town meeting to talk about McKinley and Blackstone. But both streets would go underneath the railroad tracks, both Blackstone and McKinley. If you compare Blackstone McKinley with Shaw and Marks, if you were to look on a map or just visualize from driving through it, one big difference between the two, the intersection of Shaw and Marks is a considerable distance away from the railroad. So when that was built, there was enough distance to go, like, say for Shaw or for Marks, to bring it underneath the railroad tracks as an underpass and come all the way back up and pretty much match what was there. Blackstone and McKinley is so much closer to the tracks that what has to happen is Blackstone McKinley will drop several feet from where it is today. The good news is with respect to, let's say, the mixed use development that's under construction, we're fully compatible with that project. We've worked with their planning and their engineering team. There will not be an impact to them. So that very complementary between the two. There are a number of businesses that we will be able to work around. There are some in the area where, based upon where they have driveways, how their site functions, where the project will have to pay for acquiring those properties, relocation of some of the businesses. But yeah, it will actually create some new opportunities later for some reuse of that land, and hopefully very complementary with kind of the Blackstone vision the council's adopted that's in our general plan.
Okay, cool. Yeah, no, that definitely covers that. And I'll look forward to whenever developments go on there. It's definitely interesting. And when the firm that I work for was doing work on the FCC, we're calling it the parking facilities expansion, and railroad considerations were definitely an issue there affecting lots of things. I'll get to my second question though. It's about so if I recall correctly, it was back in like February where the trail network expansion feasibility plan was getting finalized. And in general, I think it's it's a good thing. For District 1 purposes, there's it's the Herndon Canal segment of the trail that's supposed to go along roughly the area of like Ashland West, and that initial prioritized segment. I was thinking about it because I decided to ride my bike from where I live in the tower up to Riverside Golf Course the other day, just to kind of do it. The Herndon Canal, right where we're talking about, is really close to Emerson, which already has bike lanes and already has sidewalks, if I'm thinking right. And I had thought about this before and submitted some comments in regards to the trail plan to, I forget who it was. They got received by somebody at the city, and I I don't think I saw any kind of, acknowledgement or response back. It's not that big of a deal. I, don't think of myself as being that important, but I think that there's really like a bang for your buck question there about specific. I'm not even going to try to do a screen share, but the segment between Hughes and West, where it's super, super close to the existing relatively well improved Emerson segment, and potentially instead trying to build further east towards, say, Palm and Van Ness, where if you've been out watching people do what they can, sheltering in place, like it's getting a ton of usage, pedestrian active usage and traffic. So I was chewing on that for a while, and I was like, okay, I might as well bring it up. I don't know how set in stone the findings of the feasibility plan are going to be, or if there's going to be any opportunity to, during another segment of prioritization or something, have that in mind. But it's great, by the way, that that the city is doing stuff, and I think we're seeing now how useful it can be to have like a robust trail network. And as a super general question, just is there like a status update on trail stuff in general? Is anything likely to get slowed down because of COVID? Is anything likely to get slightly sped up because it's easier to do capital improvements with less people on the road? Long question, sorry, that's it.
No, don't be sorry at all. Those are really, really great questions. And I'm excited you're involved in active transportation and with the Trails Network. So let's see, so a few things. One, maybe let me start with the big picture update on trails. A lot of these in the community involve the canal banks and the Fresno Irrigation District. And FID, they're well aware of our master trails plan, but they have really said, the city of Fresno, we need you just to focus on the 7-mile segment from Blackstone going east, which ultimately winds up all the way out at Clovis Avenue and then tying into the Clovis Old Town Trail. So they've said, we need you to focus on that one before we take on new segments. So it's been a long road for the city. This has been discussed for well over a dozen years, and we are really there this time. There are actually 5 different segments of the project, the 7-mile project. They're all in plan check and plan review with the irrigation district. I would love it if a couple of those were going into construction immediately. They are all in next year's proposed budget. All the funding is there to go to construction on that 7-mile addition to the system. And the very next one I would actually propose to tackle would be the segment west of Palm Avenue, somewhere in that Palm, Fruit, Hughes, that range. Those are pretty optimal to put in place. The only other consideration will be on the maintenance side of things, that if, we just again have to be sensitive to how COVID-19 is impacting the economy, what resources the city has, and are we able, even if we can get funding to build something, do we have funding in place to maintain it? But that's an excellent suggestion.
Cool. And thanks for taking my questions. And yeah, just as a general note, I think that the city had already been doing a lot of good work on getting stuff implemented, and y'all deserve to be commended. And this meeting is in general a good thing, keeping everybody up to date on business as usual, and also showing that you guys can adapt and respond amidst pandemic quarantining conditions. So.
Thank you, Daniel. We have 2 other questions. We have Gurdeep Shergill, and then Lisa Flores. So Gurdeep, if you want to take on. I think you're muted.
Okay, can you hear me now? Esmeralda, can you hear me? Oh, can you hear me?
You're good, Gurdeep.
Oh,
Yes,
okay.
I can hear you.
Hi, Esmeralda and everyone. Yeah, so I have a quick question here. Actually, I have 2 questions. My first question is, we have worked very hard on the West of 99, the plan, West of 99 plan. I know Esmeralda she has supported that plan a lot. In fact, I served on that committee. What's the update on that plan? And then my second question is, when will the money be available for small businesses, landlords, and the renters who are affected by COVID? Thank you.
Thank you for those questions. So I'll start off with the last question. So the council will be voting on those items on Thursday, where the funds will be appropriated. On the business front, probably it'll happen within the week when we open up again the application process and go through the second round, because we already have a process in place, and our economic development department has been following what we did the first round. And so I think that that's going to be kind of easy to continue. So we'll see those dollars get out the door a lot quicker than the housing retention grant funds. But the housing retention grant funds will also be voted on Thursday, and then the administration's will develop guidelines to work with the local nonprofits that would then issue these dollars to the families that need it, or those landlords that are amenable to engage in the program. So we will see within a few weeks. I think the business, as I mentioned, the business grant program would be quicker than the housing retention grant program. And then on the West area specific plan, I don't know if we have any concrete updates. And I know Terry has been following it very closely as she was staffing the committee. Do we have any additional updates in terms of the West area plan? I know that we use it as a guiding document.
It's currently in the EIR. Maybe Scott can elaborate. Scott, are you up to date on that?
Yep, absolutely. That is being led by our planning department, Jennifer Clark and her team. But myself and the public works staff, we are involved. So basically, the consultant the city hired, they're moving along very well. They've gathered all the data on infrastructure conditions, which, as we know, West area has a lot of bottlenecks, a lot of gaps, a lot of missing storm drain, missing utilities. And they're basically just gathering that together, putting the report together, and that's something that will come forward then for Planning Commission and the council to consider. Something included in that will be a number of financing options for consideration, other than the kind of classic approach of, as development comes in, we'll require improvements, we'll go after grants and do what we can. Those two are a given. But what about other ways to address the situation, such as Mello-Roos infrastructure financing districts and approaches such as that? But that is slated to be wrapped up this year.
Thank you, Scott. Okay, we'll go on to our next question. Lisa?
It's just a real quick question, and it's not in your district. I was wondering, but it is relevant to your district. And then Lisa. Playback, wow. It's the producers EIR. Is that still going to come out this summer? And if so, how are you going to do public meetings?
Well, all our public meetings until the shelter in place order is lifted will be likely virtual, unless we can get a big enough space where we can, and we have the ability, like the guidelines allow more than 10 people to gather. So I'm anticipating if we have any, we will have them virtually, and I'll be working with Councilmember Arias. It is in his district. I know I've had a lot of interest in that neighborhood, because it is near the Tower District and the area that I represent, and it impacts people traveling in that area when they're going either to downtown or coming back to the neighborhood. So I will continue to be engaged as it goes through the process. But I'll be working very closely and take the lead from Councilmember Arias since it's in his district. In terms of the EIR, I don't know. I don't know if Scott or Terry have an update. Scott, do you have an idea?
I do not have a date yet on the release for that. That is a planning and development item. But we can certainly check into that and get back. Terry, I could get the information to you if that would help.
Thank you. It's been a couple of weeks since I got an update, but like I think Scott started, they said that the consultant has continued its work. The COVID issue has not slowed down the EIR part of it, but it is a large EIR. So the anticipation was still going to be a couple more months out.
So we'll get you that information, Lisa, as soon as we get it. But know that we will be having some type of community engagement on that issue, because I know that has been very important to the neighborhood.
And please note, because of my health condition, I'm not coming out of my house until there's a friggin' vaccine. Because if I catch this thing, I'll be dead in 3 days.
Okay, so we'll make sure we'll keep you updated. We'll always
Thank you.
either, and I'm sure now since COVID-19, people are used to Facebook Live and all that stuff. So our meetings will probably likely be even much more accessible. Thank you. Are there any other questions? I don't know if I saw any other questions on the chat or even that were asked through the YouTube channel, Terry or staff?
I think I'm clear, unless is the rest of staff listening. Is there any other questions that have come in that haven't been sent over yet?
No.
Okay, perfect. So I think that wraps up the last part of the agenda, which was Public Works. I'll just open it up if the panelists want to say anything else, but I do want to thank each and every one of you, our participants, and then in particular our panelists for making time to give critical information to our constituents. We will try to do this a little bit more regularly so that folks are getting updates as we go, but continue to follow us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, so that you get any updates related, not just to COVID, but what is happening in the city of Fresno and in particular District 1. If you have questions, I think on the screen, you will see how to best contact our office. You can call us at 559-621-7817. That goes directly to the District 1 office, or you can email us. Our staff and the team is working from home, but we're not skipping a beat. We're still working for each and every one of you. We are answering any emails, phone calls within 24 to 48 hours. And if we can resolve your issue, working with our different city departments, we try to do our best to address your concerns. So we want to thank you, everyone, for your questions. I don't know if someone else had a question. Oh, the timeline open for the dog park. I'm not sure what the timeline is yet for the dog park, but we will likely have a better update on Thursday because we will have a council meeting and we will be getting COVID updates. So I will keep you all posted on the time frame for that. Other than that, thank you again for joining. I don't know if any of the panelists have anything else that they want to say. Oh, someone else has another question. Let me see. Gurdeep, go ahead. You can close it off with a question.
Esmeralda, lately it seems like Fresno has been pretty famous all over the news, all over the social media. And I don't know what the answer is. I mean, maybe you can answer better. First of all, hats off to our law enforcement. I do see some of our officers there. Thank you for all that you do. It seems like there's a trust issue now, like between some public, not all public, but some public, small group of businesses. We need to bring Fresno's unity back. Okay. So and even the image of Fresno, it seems like Fresno is being kind of divided. So I'm gonna try to put this in a very positive way though. What are we gonna do to kind of get over the situation where Fresno still has a positive image?
Yeah, no, I thank you for the comment. Obviously, we are faced with unprecedented times, and sometimes the decisions that elected officials make, can become unpopular because of the stress and the anxiety that exists in our community, in particular for our business community and folks that have either lost job or have seen their income dwindle during this time. That's why it is important to be united. And I think if you see, the majority of the council and the mayor have worked very well to handle the situation and make the best decision with all the information that we get that is best for the entire city. And we will continue to do that. And it calls for tough decisions, but at the same time, as we are moving on this recovery road, the road to recovery here in Fresno, it's going to be important that we're mindful and that we're investing in those groups of folks that are struggling the most, which is our small business community that continues to not see the federal dollars get to them as quickly as they need them so that they can pay their bills. And also those families that are getting behind on their rent. That we need to help them so that the anxiety that they have is at least minimized as they're working with us to follow these shelter-in-place order. So I will say that, for the most part, we see folks that have demonstrated, and it does show that we're in this together. It's not an easy thing to be living through these times, but I think that there is hope. And I do see light at the end of the tunnel. It's just going to take all of us to continue to sacrifice a little for the greater good of our entire community and for the safety of our entire community. But know that there's folks that are working around the clock. The mayor is working with the subcommittee of the council, with a task force, business task force, to make sure that we're being thoughtful about how we really build on this road to recovery. We know there's tough times to continue to be ahead, but there is also a willingness to invest so that we minimize and mitigate any of those situations. And I want people to know that we feel, and I've received many heart-wrenching phone calls and texts from folks that are struggling, and I want to be able to help them. And it's why I have focused on problem solving and making sure that folks have the resources or some resources to kind of get them through this time. So again, I think that's it. We want to thank all of you for joining. We'll keep you guys posted with any other stuff. Follow us again on social media. Again, thank you to our panelists for your information and the comments. And thank you to the residents for your questions. Hope you guys have a great evening. Stay safe and stay tuned, actually, because I'm actually working with Trustee Perea. We're going to be giving out face masks to the community, given that now as a requirement as part of the shelter in place. And we know that there's a number of folks in our community that still haven't been able to get a face mask. So we'll be doing a face mask drive this coming week. So stay tuned. Thank you.
Esmeralda, call me and let me know where you want me to send masks, or have somebody from your office pick them up, because I've been sewing them. So.
Okay, thank you. Appreciate
really
it.
Good high grade stuff. I was a quilter. Anyway, I'll talk to you later. Thanks.
Thank you. Bye.
How do you? Mm-mm-mm.